Hey, everybody, and welcome to this deep dive all about hospice and palliative care.
Yeah,
We're tackling this one because you asked for it.
that's right.
And we know it can be
Little
a little bit of a tough subject to kind of wrap your head around.
it can.
You might be facing a difficult conversation or maybe a big decision, and we're here to help,
Yeah, these are sensitive topics for sure.
for sure.
But, having good information can make a world of difference.
Absolutely.
And that's why we've pulled from sources like the National Institute on Aging,
Ah, good
the
source.
Cleveland Clinic, to try to bring you the clearest picture possible.
Yeah, we figured those are pretty reputable.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to untangle some common misconceptions about these topics. Like, what is the
Yeah.
difference between palliative care and hospice?
Right.
Can you receive palliative care while you're still undergoing treatment?
Yeah.
And why do some people on hospice end up living longer than expected?
Ooh, good question.
I know that one always fascinated me. So let's jump right in with palliative care.
Okay.
What is it all about?
A lot of folks think that palliative care is only for the very end of life, but that's not true at all.
Okay.
The focus is really on improving your quality of life no matter what stage of a serious illness you're in.
So it's not about giving up. It's about getting support to live as well as possible.
You got it.
Okay.
And here's a key point. You can actually receive palliative care alongside curative treatment.
Oh,
So
interesting.
you don't have to choose one or the other. It's an extra layer of support to help you manage symptoms, make difficult decisions, and focus on your well-being.
So I'm thinking of a situation like someone who's going through chemo.
Right.
They could also be receiving palliative care at the same time.
Absolutely. And in fact, we have a story about Adriana.
Okay.
She was going through breast cancer treatment and she developed anemia.
Oh, wow.
And a palliative care specialist actually recommended a blood transfusion to help with her anemia and fatigue, and this allowed her to continue her chemotherapy.
Okay, so that makes it really clear that it's not about, stopping treatment. It's about supporting you while you are going through treatment
Exactly.
and helping you to live better.
That's the heart of it.
Okay.
And it goes beyond the physical, too. It
Right.
considers, emotional, social, and even spiritual needs.
Wow. So it really is taking a holistic approach.
It is.
But who provides that care?
It's actually a team effort.
Okay.
It often includes doctors, nurses, social workers, chaplains, even nutritionists.
Wow. It's quite the team.
They all work together with you, your family, and your other doctors to come up with a care plan that really aligns with what you want and need.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's palliative care in a nutshell.
Mhm.
Now, how is hospice different? Because I feel like people use those terms kind of interchangeably.
Yeah, that's a really common point of confusion.
Okay.
Hospice is a very specific type of palliative care
Okay.
that's provided in the final stages of a terminal illness.
So if palliative care is about living well with a serious illness, hospice is about navigating the final chapter with comfort and dignity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not about giving up, but about shifting the focus from cure to comfort and making the most of the time that remains.
I love that.
Yeah.
So how do you know when it's the right time for hospice?
That's a question a lot of people grapple with.
Yeah.
Under Medicare, a doctor typically determines if someone has a life expectancy of 6 months or less if the illness follows its usual course. But that's just a guideline.
6 months or less.
Yeah, it's an estimate. And some people actually live longer on hospice.
Oh, wow.
And choosing hospice doesn't have to be a permanent decision either.
Interesting.
We have a story about Dolores. She initially chose hospice care when her kidneys were failing,
Okay.
but then a week later, her granddaughter announced a pregnancy.
Oh, wow.
And Dolores decided to try dialysis so she could see her great-grandchild.
Oh.
She got to meet the baby, and later, when her health declined further, she re-enrolled in hospice.
That's a really powerful story.
Yeah.
Shows that it can be flexible.
It is.
You can kind of go in and out depending on what's happening.
You got it.
Okay, so that brings us to the heart of hospice. What services does it actually provide?
Okay.
What does it look like in action? Let's dive into the details.
Let's do it. Hospice is all about providing a full circle of support,
Okay.
and that usually includes expert pain and symptom management.
Okay.
So that might involve medications and therapies that are really tailored to you to keep you as comfortable as possible.
Okay.
There's also medical care like nursing, necessary supplies and equipment, but it goes beyond just the physical needs.
I would imagine it has to, right? Because facing a terminal illness, there's a lot more to it than just the physical.
Absolutely. Hospice recognizes that emotional and spiritual well-being are incredibly important.
Yeah.
So you'll often find counseling support groups and even spiritual guidance if that's something that you're looking for.
That makes sense because you're going to be facing a lot of deep questions, a lot of emotions
Exactly.
during a time like that. Yeah.
And there's practical support, too.
Okay.
Social workers can help with things like financial planning, navigating legal issues, even just dealing with complex systems. And there's respite care for family caregivers.
Yeah.
So that gives them a break, which they often desperately need.
That's a good point.
And then after a loved one passes away, there's bereavement support for those left behind.
Wow. So they really do cover a lot of ground.
They do.
Sounds like a very holistic, family-centered approach.
It is.
Okay. So where does all this care actually happen? Is it only in hospitals?
Hospice care can be provided in a few different settings.
Okay.
The most common is at home, which allows the individual to be in a familiar and comforting environment surrounded by loved ones.
Makes sense.
But it can also be provided in dedicated hospice facilities,
Okay.
hospitals, or even nursing homes.
Gotcha.
The best option really depends on each person's needs and what they prefer.
Okay, so there's flexibility there.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
What about insurance coverage? Is hospice typically covered?
That's a great question, and one that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Medicare, Medicaid, and most private insurance plans actually do cover at least some, if not all, hospice services.
Okay.
But it is always a good idea to check with your specific provider to understand the details of your coverage.
Right, and to avoid any surprises,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes to something as important as this.
Yeah.
You mentioned that 6-month life expectancy guideline for hospice. What happens if someone lives longer than that?
That's another common concern.
Yeah.
People worry about getting kicked off of hospice.
Yeah.
But here's the good news. If the doctor continues to certify that the individual is still nearing the end of life, Medicare and most insurance plans will keep covering hospice services.
Okay.
So it's not about a strict cutoff date.
Right.
It's about providing support for as long as it's needed.
Oh, that's good to know. I like that.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off
Yeah.
for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So it sounds like hospice really isn't about giving up, but about having that extra layer of support and comfort during a difficult time.
That's it.
But for people who are hesitant to even consider hospice, what are some common misconceptions that might be holding them back?
You're right. There are some misconceptions out there that prevent people from really benefiting from this amazing care.
Yeah.
The biggest one is that choosing hospice means you're giving up on life altogether.
Right.
We touched on this before.
Yeah.
But it bears repeating. Hospice isn't about hastening death or abandoning hope.
Okay.
It's about shifting that focus from cure to comfort
Right.
and making the most of the time that remains.
Okay.
Another misconception is that hospice is only for the very last days of life.
Okay.
But in reality, people can benefit from hospice care for months, sometimes even longer.
Yeah.
And the earlier someone enrolls in hospice, the more time they have to receive that supportive care and really make the most of the time they have left.
I like that approach.
Yeah.
Okay, so another misconception is that it's only for cancer patients,
Right.
but it's actually for anyone
Exactly.
with a terminal illness.
Right. It could be heart failure, lung disease, dementia, any condition where the prognosis is limited.
Okay.
And finally, some folks think that choosing hospice means you can't have any pain medication or medical treatment.
Really?
But that's just not true.
Okay.
Hospice focuses on comfort care,
Right.
and that absolutely includes managing pain and other symptoms.
So you might even say they manage it better because comfort is the #1 priority.
You could definitely make that case.
Okay.
It's all about making sure that person is as comfortable and pain-free as possible as they approach the end of life.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So really, just to summarize, it sounds like hospice is a specialized type of palliative care that focuses on comfort and support for those nearing the end of a terminal illness.
Exactly.
It's available in various settings.
Right.
It's often covered by insurance.
Yes.
And really is all about maximizing quality of life.
Yes.
It seems like it really takes a holistic approach,
It does.
providing care for the individual and their family.
Absolutely. Opting for hospice isn't about throwing in the towel.
Yeah.
It's about embracing a different kind of care.
Okay.
One that prioritizes comfort, dignity, and making the most of the time that remains.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, for our listeners who are just beginning to learn about these options, it can feel pretty overwhelming.
Yeah.
Where would you suggest they go for more information and support?
There are some amazing resources out there. Both the National Institute on Aging and the Cleveland Clinic have incredible websites
Awesome.
packed with details about palliative care and hospice.
Perfect.
We'll be sure to include links to those in the episode notes for you.
We'll hook you up. And for those of you facing these decisions right now, whether for yourselves or loved ones, remember, you're not alone.
That's right.
There's support out there, and knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And speaking of knowledge,
Yeah.
let's dig a little deeper into a specific aspect of hospice care
Okay.
that often raises a lot of questions. Okay.
Pain and symptom management.
Ooh.
This is a topic that deserves its own deep dive
It does.
because it's really at the core of what makes hospice so valuable.
Yeah, we've all heard the term comfort care.
Right.
But what does that actually look like in practice? What kind of techniques are used to manage pain in hospice?
That's a question that causes a lot of anxiety
Yeah.
for both patients and their families.
Of course.
Nobody wants to imagine their loved one suffering.
Right.
But the good news is,
For
hospice professionals are true experts in pain and symptom management.
Okay.
They have a wide array of tools and techniques at their disposal,
Good.
and they tailor everything to the individual's needs and what they prefer.
So it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach.
Absolutely not. Individualized care is key.
Okay.
The first step is a really thorough assessment,
Okay.
where the hospice team works closely with the patient to understand their pain.
And they consider everything from, the underlying illness to the patient's pain tolerance and even their past experiences with pain management.
So they really try to get a sense of the whole person
They do.
and their experience with pain.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And based on that assessment, they'll develop a pain management plan.
Okay.
And this could involve a combination of different approaches depending on what's going on.
So give us some examples. I'm curious.
Okay.
What are we talking about here?
Medication is often a cornerstone of hospice pain management.
Okay.
Hospice professionals are really skilled in prescribing and administering medications that are effective at relieving pain without causing a bunch of unwanted side effects.
Right, because sometimes the cure can be worse than the disease.
Exactly. And they're really good at adjusting doses as needed
Mhm.
because pain levels can change over time.
Right, you have to be flexible.
Yeah. And it's not just about opioids either. They utilize a variety of different medications, including non-opioid options, antidepressants, and even anti-anxiety medications, depending on the person's needs.
Okay.
And they're also really skilled at using what we call adjunctive therapies, like muscle relaxants or anticonvulsants, to address very specific types of pain.
Okay, that makes sense. So medication's a big part of it, but what about non-drug approaches?
Yeah, those are used in hospice care too.
Okay.
And they can be surprisingly effective.
Like what?
We're talking about things like massage therapy,
Oh, yeah.
which can ease muscle tension and just help someone relax.
I'm a big fan of massage.
Yeah, me too.
Can't go wrong.
And there's aromatherapy, which uses essential oils to create a soothing and calming atmosphere.
Oh, I love that. I could see how that would be so beneficial for someone who's spending a lot of time at home, maybe bedridden.
Exactly.
Can really change the whole environment.
Yeah, and then there's music therapy, which can help distract from pain, lower anxiety, and even bring back positive memories.
Music is so powerful. It can really transport you.
Yeah, and then there are techniques like guided imagery and relaxation exercises,
Okay.
where patients learn to focus their minds on peaceful images or thoughts
Right.
to help them cope with pain and stress.
So it's really a multi-pronged approach,
It is.
using medication alongside those complementary therapies
Exactly.
to provide really well-rounded relief.
Right. And it's important to remember that pain management in hospice isn't just about physical comfort.
Yeah.
It's also about addressing emotional and spiritual distress.
Yeah.
And that's where chaplains and counselors come in.
Yeah.
They play a vital role in helping patients and families cope with the emotional challenges of a terminal illness.
Yeah, pain isn't just physical.
Right.
It's all tied in with our emotions and our spirit and everything.
It absolutely is. And hospice recognizes that. They
Yeah.
provide support on all those levels
Okay.
to help patients find peace and comfort during such a difficult time.
Now, for our listeners who are acting as caregivers,
Yeah.
what can they do
That's a great question.
to help manage their loved one's pain at home? Are there practical things?
Yeah, there are definitely things that caregivers can do to be part of the pain management team.
Okay.
First and foremost, be a good observer.
Okay.
Pay attention to any changes in your loved one's pain level, their behavior, even their mood.
Right.
Don't hesitate to ask questions and advocate for what they need.
So open communication
Yes.
with the patient and with the hospice team.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And don't underestimate the power of those simple comfort measures.
Like what?
Things like fluffing pillows, offering a warm blanket, providing a gentle touch. Those things can make a world of difference.
Right. It's those little acts of kindness
Exactly.
that go a long way.
Right. And think about the environment, too.
Okay.
Creating a calm and soothing atmosphere
Yeah.
can be so helpful. Dimming the lights, playing soft music, minimizing noise, all those things can create a more peaceful space.
It's about creating like a little sanctuary
Yeah.
for them to feel safe and comfortable.
Exactly. And one more thing, don't forget to take care of yourself, too, as a caregiver.
So important.
Caring for a loved one with a terminal illness can be emotionally and physically draining.
It is.
Make sure you're getting rest, eating healthy, and asking for support when you need it.
Right. You can't pour from an empty cup.
I love that.
You got to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. And always remember you're part of a team.
Yeah.
The hospice team is there to support you every step of the way.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate to reach out to them for advice, for resources, or just a listening ear.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Getting into the specifics of hospice care, the philosophy behind it, the practical applications,
Absolutely.
the comprehensive services they offer, their approach to pain and symptom management,
Right.
the important role that caregivers play.
Yeah.
And we really tackled those common misconceptions and emphasized that hospice isn't about giving up,
That's right.
but about a different kind of care.
Right.
One that prioritizes comfort and dignity
Yes.
and making the most of the time remaining.
You got it.
Now, you mentioned earlier something that always fascinated me,
Oh, yeah.
that some people actually live longer than expected when they enter hospice care.
Right.
What's the reasoning behind that? Is it just a case of inaccurate prognosis?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
And it's one that researchers have been studying for a while now.
Okay.
While it is true that predicting life expectancy isn't an exact science, there's actually more to it than that.
Okay.
There's growing evidence to suggest that the very nature of that supportive care provided by hospice can actually contribute to increased longevity in some cases.
Really? So it's not just about making the most of the time remaining,
Right.
but potentially even extending that time.
Exactly.
Wow.
And there are a few possible explanations for this.
Okay.
First, that strong emphasis on pain and symptom management can really improve a person's physical well-being. When someone is comfortable and their symptoms are under control, their body is actually better able to handle the stress of illness.
That makes sense. If you're not constantly battling pain and discomfort,
Right.
I can see how that would free up your body's resources
Exactly.
to do other things.
And then there's the emotional and psychological support that hospice provides.
Right.
We know that stress and anxiety weaken the immune system.
Yeah.
And make people more vulnerable to illness.
Right.
So by addressing those emotional and spiritual needs,
Yeah.
hospice can actually help create a more peaceful environment.
Yeah.
Which can have a ripple effect on physical health.
That mind-body connection we hear so much about.
Exactly.
Okay.
And let's not forget about caregiver support.
Oh, that's important.
Hospice provides resources for caregivers,
Yeah.
including respite care, which helps them to manage their own stress levels and prevent burnout.
Yeah.
And that allows them to provide better care for their loved one,
Yeah.
potentially contributing to better outcomes overall.
So it's all interconnected,
It is.
right? The well-being of the patient, the caregiver,
Yeah.
the whole support system is working together.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've established that hospice care can, in some cases, lead to longer lifespans
Right.
than initially expected.
Right.
But what about the quality of that extra time?
That's a great question.
Is it just about clinging to life, or is it about truly living?
That gets right to the heart of hospice philosophy. It's
Yeah.
not just about quantity of life,
Right.
but about quality of life.
Right.
Hospice focuses on helping people live as fully as possible, even in the face of a terminal illness.
So making every moment count,
Exactly.
however many moments there are.
Yeah, and what that looks like is different for everyone.
Right.
For some, it's about spending quality time with loved ones, sharing stories, creating lasting memories.
Those precious moments.
Exactly. For others, it might be about pursuing a hobby, traveling to a favorite spot,
Yeah.
or finally checking something off their bucket list.
It's about embracing life, even as you're nearing its end.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's about finding meaning and purpose in whatever time remains.
Yeah.
And hospice helps people to do that,
Okay.
giving them the support and resources they need to live their lives to the fullest, however they define that.
So it's not just living longer, but living better.
Exactly. And that's what makes hospice care so valuable.
Yeah.
It's about maximizing both the quantity and the quality of life.
I love that.
Yeah,
Helping people live fully and die peacefully.
that's it.
Okay, so I want to circle back to something you said,
Sure.
because I have to admit this is something I've been putting off myself.
Okay.
It's not the most fun thing to think about,
Yeah.
but advanced care planning.
Yeah, It's understandable to feel that way,
Yeah.
but advanced care planning is truly a gift,
Okay.
both to yourself and to your loved ones.
Right.
It's about making sure that your wishes are honored even if you can't communicate them yourself down the road.
Right. Okay. I can see that.
Yeah.
But where do you even begin with something like that?
The first step is to really think about what matters most to you when it comes to your care. What are your values? What are your fears?
Okay.
What does a good quality of life look like for you?
Those are some deep questions.
They are deep, but they're worth spending some time with.
Yeah.
And once you have a clearer sense of your own priorities, then you can start having those conversations
Okay.
with your loved ones and your healthcare provider.
So it all comes down to communication.
It does.
Communication.
Absolutely. And luckily, there are tools out there to help with those conversations.
Like what?
Advanced directives are legal documents
Yeah.
that outline what you want for your medical treatment in specific situations.
So is that like a living will?
A living will is a type of advanced directive
Okay.
that specifically addresses end-of-life care,
Okay.
and it lays out your preferences for things like life-sustaining treatments, pain management, and even organ donation.
So it's like a roadmap
It is.
to guide your loved ones and your healthcare providers.
Absolutely. To make the choices that you would want.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then there's another type of advanced directive called a durable power of attorney for healthcare.
Yes.
What's that one?
It basically lets you appoint someone you trust, maybe a family member or close friend, to make those healthcare decisions for you if you become unable to make them yourself.
Oh, okay. So it's like having a designated advocate
Yeah,
who knows you well
exactly.
and can speak for you when you can't.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Having these advanced directives in place can really take a huge burden off of your loved ones.
Yeah.
Instead of being left guessing what you would have wanted, they have clear instructions to follow.
That's huge.
It is.
Okay. What if my wishes change? Can you update those?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's totally normal for your wishes and preferences to change over time.
Yeah.
It's important to keep those documents updated,
Okay.
and you can revise them at any time to reflect any shifts in your thinking.
Okay. So it's not a set it and forget it.
Right.
It's an ongoing conversation.
Exactly. And here's another important point. Advanced care planning isn't just for older adults or people with terminal illnesses.
Okay.
It's a valuable tool for anyone, no matter your age or health status.
You never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. Life is unpredictable, and it's always better to be prepared.
Be prepared.
Yes.
Okay. So I think our listeners now have a really solid understanding of why advanced care planning is so important.
Good.
But from your perspective as an expert in end-of-life care,
Yeah.
what are some of the most common questions or concerns that you hear from patients and families?
One question I hear a lot is, how do I know when it's the right time to make that transition to hospice care?
That's a good question.
It is a difficult question, and there's not a simple answer.
Yeah.
It's a deeply personal decision,
Right.
and there's no right or wrong timeline.
I imagine it's about trusting your gut and the guidance of your healthcare providers.
Exactly. And also really understanding what hospice care is and what it isn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are hesitant because they have these misconceptions
Yeah.
about what it entails.
Right.
They might worry that it means giving up on life or that their doctor will abandon them.
And as we discussed, that's just not true.
Exactly. Hospice is about embracing a different kind of care,
Yeah.
one that prioritizes comfort and quality of life above all else.
Okay.
And it's about providing a whole team of support
Yeah.
for both the patient and their family.
Right. So shifting the focus,
Yeah.
but not sacrificing care or connection.
Exactly. Another common concern I hear is about the financial aspect.
Well, yeah.
People worry about the costs of hospice care.
Of course, healthcare is expensive.
It is a huge burden for so many.
Yeah.
But here's the good news.
Okay.
Hospice care is usually covered by Medicare, Medicaid, and most private insurance plans.
Oh, good. So it's not something that's usually limited by finances.
It shouldn't be.
Okay.
And if someone does need extra financial help,
Yeah.
there are often resources and programs available.
So it's worth exploring those options.
Yeah, and having those conversations with the hospice team.
Right. Be upfront about it.
Exactly.
Okay. Another question is about the location.
Yeah.
Where will I actually receive this care?
Right. We touched on this before,
Yeah.
but it's worth digging a little deeper.
Let's do it.
As we mentioned, the most common setting is at home.
Right.
So people can be in familiar surroundings, surrounded by loved ones.
Yeah, there's no place like home.
Yeah, but sometimes, depending on the individual's needs and the level of care required, home care isn't feasible
Right.
or the best option.
So what are the other options?
Well, there are dedicated hospice facilities.
Okay.
These are places that are specifically designed to provide end-of-life care in a peaceful and supportive environment.
Okay.
They offer 247 access to medical professionals
Wow.
and staff who are trained in this type of care.
So it's kind of like a specialized hospital,
You could think of it that way.
but for end-of-life care.
Exactly. And then there's the option of receiving hospice care within a hospital or a nursing home. This might be the best choice for folks who need a higher level of medical care or have complex needs that are hard to manage at home.
Okay, so there's a spectrum of choices.
There is.
Yep.
And the best choice depends on the individual's unique situation and preferences.
Right.
The hospice team can help guide you in making that decision.
Okay. So for people who choose home hospice,
Yeah.
what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
Day to day, who are the people involved?
Yeah.
And what kind of support is provided?
Home hospice is all about bringing that care to the individual,
Right.
allowing them to stay in their own environment.
Okay.
It typically involves a team of professionals who make regular visits
Okay.
and provide a whole range of support.
So who are the key people on the team?
One of the central figures is the hospice nurse.
Okay.
They play a big role in coordinating care monitoring symptoms and providing hands-on care.
Okay.
They'll visit regularly to check on the patient, administer medications, and educate and support the family.
So the nurse is like the captain of the ship,
That's a great analogy.
making sure everything runs smoothly.
Exactly. And
Wow.
you've also got the hospice physician who oversees the patient's medical care
Right.
and offers guidance on pain and symptom management.
Okay.
They might not visit as often as the nurse,
Yeah.
but they're there for consultations and to address any complex medical issues that come up.
Okay, so you've got the nurse as the day-to-day support,
Right.
and then you've got the physician as the medical expert.
Exactly.
Who else is there?
Well, a lot of home hospice teams also include home health aides,
Oh, okay.
and they help with personal care tasks like bathing, dressing, toileting things that can become difficult as someone's illness progresses.
Yeah.
They can also offer companionship and help with light household chores,
Okay.
taking some of the pressure off of family members.
Yeah, so it's really helping with those everyday tasks that
Exactly.
become harder
Right.
as your illness progresses.
Exactly. And then there are social workers who provide emotional support counseling and even practical assistance. They can help with things like financial planning, dealing with legal matters, and connecting with community resources.
Oh, right, because that can be overwhelming.
It can.
Okay.
And many home hospice teams also have chaplains or spiritual advisors
Yeah.
who offer spiritual care and support.
Okay.
They can provide guidance, comfort, and a listening ear
Right.
to those facing the end of life and really help them to find meaning and peace.
Yeah, addressing those spiritual needs and questions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then you often have volunteers.
Okay.
Volunteers are amazing.
Yeah.
They might provide companionship, help run errands, or just be a friendly face and a listening ear.
Yeah, it takes a village.
It does.
Okay, so it sounds like a true team effort
It is.
with everyone working together
Yes.
to provide comprehensive care and support.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, so it's tailored to that person's individual needs.
It is.
So for our listeners who are thinking about home hospice, what advice would you give them?
Okay.
What are some key things to consider?
The most important thing is to choose a hospice provider that has a solid reputation for providing quality care.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to ask questions and do your research.
Right, so don't just go with the first one you find.
Exactly.
Do your homework.
Look at reviews, talk to people who've used their services,
Right.
get a good sense of their approach.
Yeah.
And once you've chosen a provider, be really open and honest with the team about your loved one's needs
Okay.
and your family's expectations.
So setting those expectations and having clear communication from the start.
Absolutely. Communication is key
Okay.
to making sure everyone's on the same page and working together smoothly.
Good advice.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to advocate for your loved one's needs.
Okay.
If something isn't working or if you have concerns, speak up.
Don't suffer in silence.
Exactly. The hospice team is there to support you,
Yeah.
but they can't read minds.
Yeah, you've got to be proactive and communicate.
Absolutely. And always remember, you're not alone on this journey. The hospice team is there to provide guidance, resources, and support every step of the way.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate to lean on them.
So it's not about doing it all yourself.
Right.
There's a team to help you.
Exactly. And don't forget the power of your own intuition and compassion.
Yeah.
You know your loved one better than anyone.
Yeah.
And you're in the best position to advocate for their needs and make sure they're comfortable.
So we talked about some of the challenges of home hospice,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to end on kind of a more positive note.
Sure.
What are some of the rewards of caring for a loved one at home.
That's a great point. It's important to acknowledge those rewards.
Yeah.
For many families, providing care at home allows them to create a more intimate and peaceful setting
Yeah.
for their loved one's final days.
Yeah.
It's a chance to say goodbye
Right.
in a familiar and loving environment, surrounded by all of those cherished memories and the people who matter most.
And I imagine there's a sense of closure
Yeah.
and peace that comes with that.
Absolutely. And for a lot of families, it's a way to honor their loved one's wishes and provide the kind of care that aligns with their values.
So it's about having that control
It is.
and making it a personal experience.
Exactly. And it can be a really profoundly bonding experience for families.
Yeah.
Sharing those final moments together can forge lasting memories and strengthen those bonds.
Yeah. It's kind of a
bittersweet gift.
yeah.
It is.
And while the grief of losing someone you love is just undeniable, I imagine there's also a sense of peace and fulfillment
Yeah,
that comes with that as well.
absolutely.
Knowing you gave them the best care possible.
You got it. And while the physical demands can be challenging, there's something really profound about being present with your loved one during those final moments.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges.
Yeah.
But I want to end this section on a positive note.
Sure.
What are the rewards?
You're right. It's important to acknowledge the rewards. For many families, providing care at home allows them to create a more intimate and peaceful setting
Right.
for their loved one's final days.
Yeah.
It's a chance to say goodbye in a familiar and loving environment, surrounded by all those cherished memories and the people who matter most.
Yeah, it just feels right
It does.
to be in that environment.
Absolutely. And for a lot of families, it's a way to honor their loved one's wishes and provide the kind of care that aligns with their values.
Yeah, having that control,
Right.
making it personal.
It is. And it can be an incredibly bonding experience for
Yeah.
families.
Mhm.
Sharing those final moments together can forge lasting memories and strengthen those bonds.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing in the midst of sadness.
It is.
But I imagine there's beauty there too.
Absolutely. And while the grief of losing someone you love is undeniable, there can also be a sense of peace and fulfillment that comes from knowing that you gave them love and comfort until the very end.
Yeah, you did everything you could.
Right.
It's about finding those beautiful moments
Yeah.
and finding meaning in the sorrow.
And that's what hospice care is all about, embracing the full spectrum of life, from the joys to the sorrows, and finding grace and dignity in every moment.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
I think we've covered so much ground today, from the nitty-gritty of home hospice to the emotional and spiritual aspects of end-of-life care.
We have, and hopefully our listeners feel more informed and empowered to navigate these conversations and decisions with their loved ones and healthcare providers.
Me too. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on something that I think is often considered a little bit taboo,
Okay.
the role of spirituality in end-of-life care.
Yeah.
We've mentioned chaplains and spiritual advisors as part of the hospice team.
Right.
But how does spirituality actually help people find peace and acceptance as they approach the end of life?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's a very personal and multifaceted one.
Yeah.
Spirituality means different things to different people.
Right.
For some, it's about organized religion
Yeah.
and, those traditional faiths.
Yeah.
For others, it's more about a sense of connection to something bigger than themselves,
Okay.
whether that's nature or the universe or a sense of universal love.
So finding that sense of meaning,
Yeah.
that goes beyond just the physical world.
Exactly. And in the face of death, many people find comfort and solace in their spiritual beliefs.
Okay.
It can bring hope, a sense of peace, even anticipation for what might come next.
So it's not about fearing death,
Right.
but about embracing it as part of a journey.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Okay.
And for those who are wrestling with fear or anxiety or things they haven't resolved,
Yeah.
spiritual support can be incredibly valuable.
How so?
Well, chaplains and spiritual advisors are trained to offer guidance, comfort, and a listening ear.
Right.
They can help people explore their beliefs,
Yeah.
find meaning in what they're going through,
Yeah.
and make peace with themselves and their loved ones.
So they're providing that safe space to ask those big questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They can also help with forgiveness, reconciliation, and those spiritual rituals that can bring a sense of closure and comfort.
Right. So it's attending to those emotional and spiritual needs
Yes.
that are tied in with this process.
That's right. And it's important to note that spiritual care isn't just for people who are religious.
Okay.
It's available to anyone, regardless of their background or beliefs.
So it's about respecting everyone's individual beliefs.
Exactly.
And providing that support.
It is. It's about recognizing that spirituality can make a real difference in enhancing quality of life and making death a more peaceful and dignified experience.
Yeah, for our listeners who are caregivers, how can they support their loved one's spiritual needs during this time?
That's another great question. The most important thing is to be respectful of their beliefs and practices, even if they're different from your own.
So creating that space of acceptance.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Listen with empathy without trying to impose your own beliefs.
Right, walking alongside them on their journey.
That's beautifully put. You can also offer practical support, like arranging for a chaplain or spiritual advisor to visit,
Okay.
or providing materials that align with their beliefs, religious texts, inspirational readings, calming music, things like that.
So helping them connect with those sources of comfort.
Exactly. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just be there,
Yeah.
hold their hand, offer words of love and encouragement. Those simple gestures can mean the world.
That power of presence.
Yes.
Okay.
And remember, as a caregiver, you don't have to go through this alone.
Right.
The hospice team is there to guide and support you as you navigate these conversations and experiences.
So you're part of a team.
Yes, you are.
We've explored spirituality and end-of-life care.
We have.
Now, I want to touch on one more aspect of hospice
Okay.
that I think is often overlooked,
Hmm.
bereavement support.
Yeah.
We talked about the care provided during the dying process.
Right?
But what happens after a loved one passes away?
Mm.
Does hospice just disappear?
That's a great question, and it's something that surprises a lot of people.
Yeah.
Hospice care doesn't end when the patient dies.
Really?
It includes bereavement support for the surviving family members.
So they understand that the grieving process doesn't just stop
Exactly.
when someone's physical presence is gone.
Grief is a very natural and healthy part of life.
Yeah.
And hospice understands that and provides resources and support to help families through it.
So what kind of bereavement support do they usually offer?
It varies from hospice to hospice,
Okay.
but most offer a mix of individual counseling support groups and even memorial services.
So there's something for everyone.
Yeah, whether you prefer one-on-one support or you find comfort connecting with others who are going through a similar experience.
Right.
Bereavement support can be especially important for people dealing with what we call complicated grief,
Okay.
like after a sudden or traumatic loss, or if they have a history of mental health struggles.
So extra support.
Exactly. And bereavement services aren't just for immediate family either. They're also available to close friends, caregivers, and anyone who is significantly impacted by the loss.
Right, because that grief can really ripple outward.
It can.
Yeah.
And hospice recognizes that
Okay.
and tries to be there for everyone who needs support.
I love that. So for our listeners who are grieving the loss of a loved one, what advice would you give them?
Okay.
What can they do to help themselves through this tough time?
First of all, be kind to yourself.
Okay.
Grief is a natural process,
Right.
and there's no right way to grieve.
Yeah.
Let yourself feel whatever you're feeling, sadness, anger, guilt, confusion. Don't try to bottle it up.
So you're saying it's okay to experience those feelings?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to reach out for support.
Yeah.
Talk to friends, family, a therapist, a grief counselor. Don't try to go it alone.
Find those safe spaces to express yourself.
Exactly. And remember, healing takes time.
Yeah.
Be patient with yourself. Grief isn't something you just get over.
Right.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
As you move through grief, find ways to celebrate the life of your loved one.
Okay.
Share stories, look through photos, honor their memory in ways that feel meaningful to you.
So keep your spirit alive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as you heal, you'll likely find that the sharp pain of grief gradually softens, and the love and memories you shared will bring you comfort and even joy.
That's such a hopeful message.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the enduring power of those connections we make in life.
So well said.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered an incredible amount of ground today, from the practicalities of hospice and palliative care to the emotional, spiritual, and even philosophical aspects of end-of-life care.
I agree. And hopefully our listeners feel more equipped to navigate these conversations and decisions with more confidence and compassion.
I hope so, too. I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been really enlightening and very moving.
I'm glad I encourage everyone listening to keep exploring these topics
Yeah.
and to have those open, honest conversations with their loved ones and healthcare providers about their wishes for end-of-life care.
Those conversations are so important,
They are.
even though they can be hard.
Right. It helps ensure that our wishes are known and that we receive the care that we want and deserve.
And that's what it's all about.
That's right. And remember, while death is a natural part of life, It doesn't have to be a source of fear and dread.
Oh,
By talking about it openly and honestly,
yeah.
we can demystify it, prepare for it, and ultimately embrace it with greater peace and acceptance.
That's a beautiful way to end this conversation.
Thank you.
So on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into hospice and palliative care. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next week with another fascinating topic.
I look forward to it.
Until then, be well, keep exploring, and remember to live each day to the fullest.